Hey everybody, let's take a look. I'm just gonna go live here. Wonder, let's see, what social media platforms do you use? Facebook, Instagram, Threads, so those are the ones here. Threads, Twitter X, what else? Oh, well, there's 5. All right. Well, maybe I'll just do Facebook. Maybe I'll do Twitter, and then maybe I'll do the TikTok. All right. Save. Wonder if I can launch that poll. I don't know how this works. Guess we'll learn. Guess we'll learn together. So, I mean, this is really it. This is really the whole practice. This is me. I've had a Facebook account for really since 2006. And if you look at the history of Facebook, or you know the history of Facebook, or you've used Facebook, really what I think the world knows now is how it's not only been sort of used differently, or it's evolved over time by many users, but you know, there's a lot of influence that Facebook and social media can have. And today's Monday, February the 23rd, 2026. I just got finished. I've been doing a practice on TikTok where I read a chapter from a book. So far, I've read the Tibetan Book of the Dead for Beginners, A Guide to Living and Dying. And then I just started reading a book called Insight Meditation, The Practice of Freedom by Joseph Goldstein. And here we are. Here I am. I find that TikTok and learning a new style, a new approach to social media, even for my own self, like, it is a mind trip to navigate. Facebook now is a mind trip to navigate, although it has been for like a very long time. So this is just a check-in. I've been checking in online for many years now. And sometimes I check in and I feel fantastic and I know exactly what I want to talk about. And there's been times where I check in and I have no idea what I'm going to say, but I'm feeling scared or I'm feeling isolated or I'm feeling like I'm getting my, butt handed to me, so to speak. But I'm not alone in that. I'm really not alone in that feeling. Um, so I've used social media since 2006, but I've used social media way before that. So when I first moved to Ottawa, like nearly 30 years ago, the trends and the spaces that I would be on would be like, I think they're like bulletin board networks, BBC, or like, I'm really getting old, so forgive my memory, but it literally was like almost like an email news server, and you logged in and it was like, oh, you can kind of see a handful of people, you can create conversations. I used to be on, or well, and I probably still am. I could probably figure out how to revive it, but I used to be on Live Journal, and that was again just a blogging platform. There was MySpace back in the day, and then I remember amongst all my nerd friends, kind of how cool Facebook was gonna be when it opened up to other people. And it was a mix of things because, of course, Facebook was sort of born out of the mind of a young man, and he wasn't the greatest human all the time because, before he sort of invested in this platform, he was doing a website like called Hot or Not, and it started really on a college campus type deal. And Hot or Not was like where people would rate like whether people were hot or not. And really that's shitty. Like if you really think about it, like what we know now is that we really don't want to judge other people in that way. Um, right? But like everything, it evolves and it morphs and it turns into a thing, and then it's like, other populations, other people, other things develop, and the truth is that I know people in my family, friends, neighborhood, community, world who their use of Facebook is very different. Um, I'll tell you, every single thing I've ever posted is still there. I've definitely had people pile on me, people use what I'm posting authentically and vulnerably for their own benefit, right? My gosh, I still have people who think that even after years of being told very politely to just, hey, this isn't for you, to F off, to no, really, F off, to how dare you have the audacity to think you can encroach on my space. And that's very real. I cultivate a space, I curate a space. I've had to basically witness in my space people not only undermine me, but undermine people that I really love and really respect. And straight up honest, over the last 5 years, especially, and even way before that, it really truly for me started probably around 2016. and then escalated into 2017 and 2018 and 2019 and 2020, and so many people got into bad habits. Facebook has always been a community and a resource and an interest of mine because it allowed me and allows me to connect to people. And especially since 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, I've had to do more than the average to really honestly protect myself, protect my heart, my soul, my ideas, my intellectual property, my physical property, truth, law, honesty, and have had my personhood, my humanity thrown to the wolves, or the bears, or the pups, or the truckers, or the bikers, or the Hells Angels, or the Satan's Choice Angels, or the, like, literally everybody who thought or feels like their hustle comes from somebody else's bustle. Being a person who just lives an authentic life, it seems culturally that it's okay to attack them. And it's really kind of messed up. Because even on Facebook, going into 2026, this is an election year in Ottawa, a place where I've lived for 30 years now. And 30 years ago, when I came to Ottawa, the first couple of organizations I got involved in, the first one was PTS, or Pink Triangle Services. This was a service that provides, resources and supports and advocacy. And I was a volunteer. And just like what I did when I lived in Owen Sound, Ontario, and was connected with the AIDS Committee of Grey and Bruce and people of alternate lifestyles, which was just a social and advocacy group, I got involved in community here. And I moved to town with a family, including a woman named Marion Steele. And if you oogle in the Google in the Boogle her name, I'm so proud of Marion. I definitely knew how incredible her heart and soul was, because she is a mentor and a leader, but also a sister and a friend to me. And really, there's nothing special about me other than I just seem, I guess, fearless, and certainly activated when I see injustice. But I joined. So in '96, it was a different kind of Pride Committee thing, but I got to meet a couple of local organizers and got to be part of what's now our history. because when the Lansdowne Rainbow Party was formed, when the rainbow flag was being fundraised for, when advocating to grow in a meaningful way, I was right there. Right there on the property of City Hall. I think they called it Festival Plaza. I don't know what they call it now. Who knows? Maybe Jim Watson renamed it after himself. Like, who knows? But I was there. I was the first organizer slash coordinator slash director for Kids Can, which was essentially just saying we have family and we are family too. And naturally, because we're all human and it was the time that it was, of course, it was right next to the beer gardens. So in 2026 or going forward, I don't know that we would stick the kids right next to the beer gardens. The other thing that I find hilarious was that we had it situated out near the road. So, if you scroll back a little bit in my feed, you'll see a video of me from the flag raising in 2019. But that in that general spot back in 1997, that's where the kids were. We had a little circus tent type thing for shelter. We had art and supplies. And I wasn't a cool kid back then. And yeah, I wasn't treated very well by some of the guys who thought that their sexy bodies or their coolness or their whatever was way cooler, right? But hey, I remember being there and showing up and continuing to show up. And now it's a big part of our history. In 2007, I became a bus operator. Before that, I worked at Bell Canada at 310 Bell. I worked at Rogers Communications in the sales and service. I had worked at Price Waterhouse Coopers. I had worked at Tima or Convergys. CRA for a little while. I did a lot of things. I worked in a restaurant that was owned by a couple, Wally and Jeff. I've been a lot of places. I've done a lot of things. But in 2007, I qualified and became a bus operator. I had been in a relationship in 2007 for about 3 years, 3 or 4 years. I was on top of the world to have a career, to join a union, and I remain an employee and probably one of the most public for the longest time bus operators at OC Transpo here in the city of Ottawa since 2007. Member of my local ATU 279. since 2007. Now, many people have different thoughts or feelings about that. Many people certainly have opinions about it. Many people have ideas about my value there, my worth, my contribution. But none of them can argue. I'm not sure the number of what our local is, how many operators we have, and it's not because anything other than it's just not something that's often talked about, because as far as I'm concerned, there's probably a handful of people who figured that really it's 10 or less, because their opinions and their experiences are the only ones that matter. And that's an attitude that continues to foster, and it has nothing to do with me. But also, if anyone comes here thinking that I'll be apologetic for literally anything I've ever posted or said here, well, that's probably why they come here too, because I just won't. I think anybody who uses social media or any platform, be it personally, be it professionally, be it for an organization, I mean, ultimately you're still responsible for what happens there, and within the capacity of your posting. So, there's a couple of areas I think where people just sort of make quick assumptions. And so here, one of those areas is around a person named Jim Watson. Now, I know Jim Watson pretty much since I moved to Ottawa. The history books shows Jim Watson's connection to Ottawa, to politics, to himself, to groups, to organizations, to the work. And I've pretty well seen Jim Watson be in council, be in other politics, provincial politics. I've bumped up against him because of things that I've done over the years that involves like City Hall, involves my City Hall, involves my employer, involves my connection to the community. And to my face, I've never really had many issues or concerns. It just always has been what it has been. In 2016 certainly, I had reached out to the mayor and Steve Kanalakos or whatever, the manager, and I wrote an email. And the email simply stated what I was experiencing, or what I had experienced, or my understanding of what I was going through. And, in my mind's eye, I thought I was following the whistleblower protection policy that is written by my employer. I thought I was writing to somebody who had had a long term career and who I saw as invested in Ottawa. Um, and I really just was doing what I thought I needed to do, all within my rights. And in May of 2016, I think it was, Jim Watson took an action which was to reply to my email and to say, this isn't my lane or whatever. I forget the exact wording he said, but he basically said, this isn't what I would handle, but I'm going to put you through to the head of HR. And that person, her initials are MP. She corresponded with me regarding this path and this process, and she said, we're going to set up a meeting. And you need to reach out to your union. And I remember how I was treated by former President Craig Watson of the ATU 279. I certainly know how I had experienced and was treated in the workplace, in the union environment between 2007 and 2016. And I gave the feedback, well, I don't really feel like I'm gonna be represented. But in a whole separate email, I sent an email to my local president, to president of ATU Canada, and to the international president of the Amalgamated Transit Union. And it mirrored and reflected what I had shared with my employer, with the people in charge, with the mayor and with the city as I understood it. And so this was also my introduction to former President Clint Crabtree, who responded by email, who denied, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Like, whatever his response was, it certainly wasn't within any reality outside of his own, perception, I think. But nonetheless, he said he would send somebody, and then he basically said he was going to show up himself. And in a meeting with a manager at the time named AJ Ryland and a human resources representative named Bill McPhee, who I had been working with or trying to work with for a few years previous to that. And especially between 2014 and 2016, the former mayor, Jim Watson, had arranged a meeting through his staff at City Hall. And when I got there, I was shown into a little conference room, and waiting for the president of my union, only to have somebody knock on the door and being handed a phone, and it was President Clint Crabtree canceling, saying he couldn't make it, so he didn't show up. That was 2016. And at that time, while trying to pursue my rights, I was working as a coffee barista at Bridgehead Bathgate in Gloucester, and I was at that time would have been, I probably was really still enrolled in improv, like 101 maybe at that time. And I don't know where AJ is now. I don't know where Bill McPhee is now. But what I do know is that what happened in that room, I'll never ever shut up about. I'll never be quiet about. I'll never be coerced into not talking about it, not reporting it, not pushing back against it. It was incredibly disheartening. It was dehumanizing. It was gross. It was calculated. It was coordinated. And it was a couple months later, because in Ottawa, the parade and all that stuff happens in August. And so I felt that I needed to address how I felt about how I was treated. Because what I don't think gets reflected at my employer or in my union at any level, local, Canadian, or international, is who I am as a bus operator. Certainly wasn't reflected through my section head, Zahid Shodhari, ever. And if you know him, or if you are him, or you're part of his family or friends or social circle or crew or discount club, I don't give a flying rat's ass. Nobody will be able to tell me that the way I was treated by him is anything less than abuse and harassment and cruel. And from the get-go, I will always remember how he treated me. I will always remember what he said to me. Just like I will always remember what everybody did to me. In my whole life, that's just how I am. Doesn't really need any further explanation. never ever treated them the way that they treated me. It just is. In 2015, I was part of an effort that actually saved 30 years of our LGBTQ plus archives. I didn't step on any toes. I didn't try to take over anything. I didn't try to get any major glory. What I tried to do was to use my branding and marketing and community coordination opportunity for a used buy and sell website to leverage a solution to make sure that our archives didn't get lost. I got treated like a bag of garbage. I got publicly undermined. I got made fun of. I was offered things that went against my values and ethics and morals. But it got saved. And it got donated to the current Pride entity, which I don't know if any of us could have predicted. I mean, some of us were saying right off the hop that what was being packaged and sold to us certainly wasn't really reflective of what was being packaged and sold to us in any authentic way. And those efforts could have been more inclusive, more open, except for the people who were organizing it were deeply motivated. And if you know Tammy Dobson, I remember her as a real estate agent who had like a Glenn Close fantasy where she really just thought she was the sun and the moon, and her hustle and bustle was just one that we had to accept, and I just never accepted it. My efforts included the 8th Committee of Ottawa. It included a place called After Stonewall Bookstore, which the original owner had sold at this point. It included a social enterprise, which I was really admiring at the time. And it was like another piece of showing support to a new organization, right? And so in August of 2016, on a rainy day, I had a friend of mine help me make a poster, to which I mounted on a stick with my original uniform shirt. I stood on Kent Street, and when my employer came along, when the bus that I had driven in the parade, so to speak, in 2010 and years previous, I was one of the original organizers of OC Pride at OC Transpo. But in 2016, I was marching in front of the bus. And nobody bothered me, and I didn't bother with anybody. And then in 2017, was cleared. And I was brought back for another full training. So I had done the training in 2007. And I had my cohort then, which recently you may have seen me post or talk about a guy named Shawn Moore. And Shawn Moore used to be operator 5935. And I always knew him as a fairly good guy. Never really had reason to doubt him. At least before his true colors shone through. But in 2017, I went back to full training. And I know how I was received and advised by, again, Zahid Shodhari. And I know exactly how former President Clint Crabtree handled it. And I know who my trainers were, I know who my instructors were, I know what I observed and what I heard and what I had seen. I also still had all my memories of being a transit fare processor in 2015 and working in the finance department and in the vaults. I believe that fell under ATU 1760. I certainly remember how I was treated when placed at Constellation for one day prior to that was in 2015 as well. So you see how even in this check-in, it's easy to bounce back and forth. And it's really because I have a body of evidence, I have a body of wisdom and knowledge and experience and trauma navigating OC Transpo as bus operator 5946. What really stands out for me is that even before I met President Clint Crabtree, there were certain people who took interest and were full of promises, full of encouragement. I know what I had to experience. I know the attention I got. And there were 3 people, maybe 4 people in that second cohort that would carry forth many other experiences. But one of them is a person named Nathan Hunter. And the reason why I bring that up is because I know the support not only on a personal level, but as an operator and as a local union member. I know the advocacy that I put forward based on what I observed. even later on, after, like, I know what Nathan Hunter's experience was as a bus operator. I know what his experience was as a member of a Facebook group called Masculinity Under Construction. I also know what his experience was as a person who needed to come and apparently stay with me and my former friend and roommate in a place where I lived in Blackburn Hamlet. And I definitely know the damage that my vehicle sustained, and that my garage door sustained, and that I sustained. I certainly remember every interaction with Nathan. And it just is what it is. And so 2017, great. 2018. Now, one of the other things I'll mention is, because in Blackburn Hamlet, for example, there's something called the Blackburn Hamlet Community Association, and I joined that. I was looking around there. I was offering support to them. I met a person named Laura Dudas, who was running that organization for the most part. And I remember basically trying to offer the same sort of like local support through the same kind of community coordinator program through the Used Ottawa site. And I definitely remember what my impressions of Laura were. I definitely know what my experiences of being a member in that group was. And I definitely remember being so undermined by people who were not of good measure, and then being stonewalled by being banned from the group. And then I also remember starting my own page, which is called Spotted in Blackburn Hamlet, and I remember what that experience was, trying to have a page that was inclusive. And I definitely remember the attention that brought and continues to bring. I certainly recall the interaction that I had when I was simply walking from the local grocery store back to my home, and the local representative at that point for council engaged with me, which was just really strange, but tied into a number of other experiences. So it just is what it is. But it's important because everybody is accountable. What else can I share about that? Well, I can definitely share that the same type of thing happened in my workplace. So, members of my union and other colleagues of mine, they cultivated and curated Facebook groups and pages that now that I think it was called Deadheaders, and then I think there was a branch called Deadheaders 2, and yada yada yada, and this one's official. But what I know is that anyone who has put their name to paper in any sort of official way to complain about me or to try to complain about me, I do know that they had their own page first, and that they have their own pages, they have their own devices and groups, they have the people that they stay in touch with at work. And I also know that because they didn't like what I had to say, that I got banned and undermined and banned from that group too. And that is what gave birth to, or that's what led to, Next Stop for operators moving forward. And I started the Facebook group, I opened it up to everybody, and many, 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 many people came in, including the people who had banned me and kicked me out of the other group. And they were welcome there, because all I was doing was creating an open space, right? And so that was in 2017. But I also made posters. I also included other people. Those posters went up around work, and many, many, many people used the platform in a way that they wanted to use the platform. And a couple of those people, namely George Abboud and namely John Vydra, were familiar with Deadheaders. They were familiar with Next Stop. There were people who were familiar with the Speak Up and the comedy and all the things I was doing, the coffee shops. But they weren't open about it. They were using it for their own purpose, writing their own story. And so people whom I had sort of met in 2017 or reconnected with in 2017 really had just a real sense of who they were and what they were about, and then where I should fit into that. And if you ever hear the term Dream Team 2018, that's a really quick reference guide to who those people were. Anyway, back to when I met President Clint Crabtree for the first time, because it was only after the full recycle of training in 2017. And so when we all graduated, I had to see AJ Ryland, I had to see Zahid Shodhari in the training class, and trust and believe these guys. They just used every opportunity they could. I remember everybody in the training department who used every opportunity they could. and then we went to the Union Hall. So it was graduation, and I got my certificate, and we went to the Union Hall, and I was advised that everybody was being sworn in, but I wouldn't need to be sworn in because I was already a member. Which was really the very first moment that Clint Crabtree, president of the union, it was the very first moment where he had to give me the answer that I had been talking about for a long time, but also the moment where he had to show his cards, which, you know, Clint had tried, you know, he had played confused and dumb leading up to that point. And there was a moment in the swearing in because in 2017 there was buzz and clicks and talk about the LRT opening, and people were worried about their pink slips that would be coming, and the union was like, nope, no, we're not going to lose one job, there's no need to lose jobs, we're going to fight for everybody, right? But there was a moment where he said, we're here to support you, or we're here to serve you, and he choked on his words, and he was looking right at me because he knew I was looking at him. And after everybody was sworn in, President Clint Crabtree walked all the way around and came up and introduced himself to me. And then showed his cards. And then, but I went to work. And at that time, I was juggling not only my own return to work, not only the absolute circus that was generated because of the culture there, but also navigating the absolute gaslighting of at least two sides of the Clint Crabtree experience. And the part that's not unique to me is that in the time leading up, and any time I could observe him, and any time I was spending in his presence, and any experience I've had of him, and how he handled himself, how he treated his people, yeah, it's just not something that I would subscribe to. And so I would just do what he advised me to do, and I knew that I just had to do it, see it come to no conclusion, and then continue, because by this time in 2017, rolling into 2018, I knew exactly what was up as far as my experience was going to go, and as far as my support and coverage. And so what I was coerced into, or forced into, or guided into was filing human rights complaints, because Clint was very encouraging about blaming former President Craig Watson and those included complaints to the CIRB, the Canadian Industrial Relations Board, against the union and against the city, to which Clint was very convincing that he was on it and that we were going to come up with a solution. And after representing me against the employer, including Zahid, Clint recommended and promised that one of the solutions moving forward was that I would be able to join the union and become a shop steward and get involved. And then proceeded to have no interest in making that happen. And so I know what I've been through, I know what I went through, and I know who did it between 2017 and 2018. And this includes assaults, multiple assaults around the whole city while operating the bus. It includes the overt ones, the obvious ones. It includes low-key harassment, intimidation, threats. I certainly know how I was treated by the control room, by supervisors, by transit law, by union lawyers, by employment lawyers, by city representatives. Including every single circumstance that went into being represented by health and safety after a sexual assault that took place during work. And I know how I was treated by the handoff between Zahid Shodhari and the new manager for me, which his replacement was Trudy Norton. And John Keeley, who replaced Jennifer Lowry and or Bill McPhee. And then I know how the grievance meeting went. I know how the AKA Next Step meeting went. I know the union reps and the executive board. I definitely know how I was coerced into creating charges. President Clint Crabtree basically crafted all of those as his response to how I should pursue my rights. And I certainly remember how Harry, who was my training instructor, Phil, George, I definitely recall how they were supportive and then not supportive. I definitely remember how it went between 2017 when I became officially the facilitator of OC Pride, making it into publications, participating in the Pride Parade. Definitely remember participating in 2018. Both of those years, one of them was driving the bus, and in 2018, Harry drove the bus, and I marched with the microphone, wearing the OC Pride polo shirt. In 2018. Definitely remember who signed up to do improv comedy and learning improv and doing all of that stuff. Definitely remember shop steward ATU local 279's Alan Miller, and I remember his involvement and encouragement in OC Pride. I remember his involvement and encouragement and attendance at the comedy stuff, and certainly remember his input when my comedy team decided to take over the production. I certainly remember what it was like to bump into Alan at Saint Laurent Mall, where he was with a child that he introduced as his kid. And I remember what it felt like and what it looked like and what it appeared like when he tried to cover up that he was starting to make a recording of me. Definitely remember how it felt to bump into and be confronted by the vice president of the union at the time. And definitely remember what it felt like in just trying to even participate in Pride in 2019. What it felt like to just go to a flag raising that I had every right to be at. What it felt like to be betrayed by people in the community whom I had offered support for. I definitely know what happened to me on August 19th, 2019. Definitely know what happened to me in Blackburn Hamlet during Pride Week. Certainly know what happened to me on September 2nd, and then going into September 9th and 10th and 11th, and ever since. So, all of it is what it is. So I'm not going to take much longer because, again, this was just a check-in, and I'm feeling really great about it because these are things that happen to us. It's stuff that I've processed. But I'll tell you, it's certainly interesting. That, somebody like John Vydra, for example. So he files complaints in response to complaints. So fella Trevor Boutelier, Trudy Norton, and George Abboud, on August 19th, they're named in an email that also lists former Mayor Jim Watson in his email, by his email address, suggesting that the return to work that I was doing, where I was accessing my work gym, that apparently was used to say that I shouldn't be able to go to the work gym, and that I should be trespassed from all the property. And that's I think her name's Tessa Muvadris or whatever. I don't know who it is, but she's the one that asserted that that perhaps I shouldn't be on any property. Certainly, neighbors Anne, Fro, and Jennifer in Blackburn Hamlet, my landlord Scott. Definitely remember what that was like, responding to a community officer, because my neighbor Anne was complaining that she felt threatened, and I definitely remember that community officer's response when I basically pointed out what Anne and Fro and Jennifer's behaviors and actions were like. Certainly remember what it was like to be tweeting on Labor Day in 2019, just to again have another wellness check. And I remember what it was like to use the pivot statement for police and seeing the benefit of how, because there was no reason, how I was able to follow up with the officer in Orleans, with somebody who had seen John and engaged with John on my personal social media, John Vydra, the person who was responsible for filing the complaint, allegedly, or whatever, on the 19th. The person who, had known me for a long time, at least online. And so I remember the follow-up. I remember going to speak to those officers and the mental health person and being cleared again. And I remember receiving Clint's email on September 9th and dismissing it, because again, how many times does one guy get a kick at the can when he literally has no plan? In May, I had received an email from his lawyer, the union lawyer, saying, in light of complaints and this, that, and the other, I'm not going to talk to you. And then I remember in June receiving a letter from the same person, basically trying to push a narrative that just does not exist in any reality. And I don't care how much money he has or how many days he spends in courts, you can't force a fantasy onto anybody else. Nobody's above the law that way. And so in June of 2019, receiving really a pain in the ass, what is sort of shielded as a veiled threat in a cease and desist type thing, right? And then, but not a veiled threat in that, basically saying shut up or else, and seeing what came after that. Especially on the 3rd, when the former president um, went to criminal court with an allegation based on what he saw on my social media around Trigger Morris name, which is a comedy name. The only thing he had was to say the word trigger. And then all he had to do was suggest that what I was posting was unstable or what have you. And he was able to essentially file in court. Now, he didn't serve that paper, and definitely when he emailed me on the 9th, he didn't mention that he had taken any of those steps. And on the 10th, I met another person, an operator, for the first time, explained my situation, explained why they saw my pushback, and that person got to witness again another fantasy based, coordinated effort to call police and to make claims and to threaten and to intimidate. And that was on September 10th, 2019. And I showed up, snapped a couple pictures just like I always do. I was dressed up like a cowboy. I had a little stop sign, vintage stop sign, and I went in and I signed and I sat down for my union meeting, and then was confronted by officers who had no interest in what I was doing or what I was about, had no interest in assessing whether there was any threat, because there wasn't. And Clint didn't even come in the room that day. He just really thought that his idea or his plan was going to work. And I honestly don't think that any of the responding officers had any real ill will against me. I really don't feel like I was seen or appreciated or protected or safe because of what obviously happened. But I just think that what they were hoping is that I would just not be at those meetings. The meeting where Clint had to explain why they had blocked and reinstate the pay for the vice president. And I don't doubt that he was nervous about what I was going to talk about, because he knew what I was asking about months up to that point. And so September of 2019, I think, I honestly just think, everybody was so overwhelmed and up their own asses that I appeared to be a bigger threat to them than any reality would lay out. And that's when I experienced being pulled out of my union hall. I experienced being driven to a parking lot like it was some sort of bad film. And I don't even know how many officers came and went. I know how it felt. I know how cruel it felt. I know how humiliated I felt. How terrified I was. How sick I was getting because of all the unnecessary behaviors. I'll never ever forget every second, every minute, and every hour I spent inside cell block 13 at the Ottawa police station. I'll never ever forget bumping into people that used to work with my ex, who knew me from a sort of time back in the day when he used to work there. And I'll never forget the experience of being taken to the courts, both of them. I'll certainly never ever forget the experience of the prosecutor. I'll never forget when she tried to close the recognizance that was generated from the provincial arrest on September the 10th, and me saying that no, there's no need to close that. And when she asked why, I said, because I don't know what, like if President Crabtree is this terrified now, what's his next move, to call in the army? And then I remember what it was like to actually go in and finally just see it cleared. So I'm clear from local, municipal, provincial, and federal courts. I'm not worried about any of that. So, and then and so yeah, so that piece is done. I continue to just go on my path. I continue to educate myself. I continue to receive and try to respond to the many external folks who think that their approach, their interests, their business, their pursuits, their opinions, their hustle or their bustle is more important than mine. I'm gonna wrap it up because it's been an hour and 23 minutes, which I'm fine with. This is what I call the Dharma Talks, which is just sort of going with whatever the flow feels. It's called Journaling Out Loud. But in December of last year, Shawn Moore, who is formerly Operator 5935, he came on to my TikTok. He started to follow my page, and he has his own account and he has it private, but he tagged me on a post about the Rob Reiner murders. And in the post, it was sort of one of these, like, it was like the New York Post or one of these whatevers. And it was basically making fun of a protester. And the guy was saying he's autistic and he had just been sexually assaulted and this, that, and the other. And the overall tone of the post was like making fun of this guy. And Shawn Moore tagged, "Hey, is this Angus by design? LOL." Which means that I would have gotten a notification, and I did. And again, here I was put into a personal dilemma because I know how people are treated. I know what people are going through, and can I blame him if he's going through the same type of culture I was going through? And really, yeah, I can, because again, he had proven himself to be somebody who says a lot behind your back, but not to your face. And it's not cool, even if it's about me or not about me, it's not cool to make fun of autism online. It's not cool to taunt anybody. And really, it's like, you know, I don't know how many followers he has, but I also know that one of the things they love to do is to do stuff like that, and then they take screen grabs, and then they slap and tickle each other on the backsides. And so really, whether it was to me or about me or for me, uh, or just about me to be fodder for his opinions, you know, Shawn's had lots of time to like fuck around and find out, and so I blocked him. I blocked him because I'm a buddy up champ, and the lift up acts of kindness were coming, and so the open space that I had opened for him, because it's my principle and values, I actually had to close because of his actions and behaviors. He wasn't able to just not, um, try to be intimidating or try to be threatening or try to just be a jackass, to be straight up honest. So I blocked him. And then, completely unrelated, I paid up my union dues up until June of this year. And I reached out to say I'd like to look at my file. And, I was able to communicate and coordinate. And I feel like those things are pretty respectful, because I'm not going to hold anybody accountable for other people. Right? Or at least until I know that it's a me problem. But it's certainly interesting to go as arranged, and then to come face to face with former President Clint Crabtree, and then to see the ripple effect of opinions and attention that comes from the gossip circle. And so when I made my way back, in a follow-up, it was really interesting to see that Shawn Moore had surfaced again. I've heard that he no longer is employed, so like with the union, but then he told me that himself. So he's not a bus operator anymore. He's not part of my union. Who knows where he is or what he's doing? But why he just keeps popping up, why I'm so interesting. And then to receive yet another email from John Vydra, who's already taken it up with with management. He's already pushed his weight around as a shop steward. He's already he can be heard with his opinions and what he's saying, and suggesting that he's part of a big thing and he's on top of it and he's this, that, and the other. Definitely seeing him show up in gay bars and restaurants and really anywhere he sees me, or if I post about it. And interesting to to then receive an email from him years later, and yet very recently, saying, "Oh, I've enjoyed the peace and quiet, and I have nothing to do with that other person." Like, how big is one man's ego? That John Vydra thinks that he can pop up, he can message other people, he can go to organizations and things and places that I go to, and insert himself and dominate himself into that. And that he can, for years, try to sell a narrative towards me, and then try to use his opinions and thoughts and push it through our employer, push it through our court system, push it through our unions. And yet still email me as if I'm going to be on this end of it going, "Oh, well, he's enjoyed his peace and quiet, and now he has nothing to do with it." I'm like, fly a fucking kite, dude. John knows that he's unwelcomed. He's received that by text, by phone, by email, by voice, like all the things. He's just braver than I know, because, you know, I was advised by an officer that he had called to make a complaint at one point, and that he was advised to just leave me alone, as I was advised to leave him alone. And yet, here we are, where John Vydra, Vydra, and his wife, mind you, feel like the world is their oyster. So, I put yesterday is history, and the future's a mystery, and the present is a gift. So, being present today, I would say that this space, any space I'm in, past, present, or future, has never been, is not now, nor ever will be the accessible property of former Mayor Jim Watson, or whatever he is now, who or whatever he's doing now. He's always been autonomous. He's done all sorts of things about me without me, and, you know, quite frankly, I think if he had have shown up himself, or done the right thing, or even had a meeting with me, then this could have been cleared up long ago. So I'm not part of the Watson Club. I'm not part of his big vision, or anything that he's ever done in his whole history. But I will say that part of our common history is that he had a duty to represent me. He took an action in 2016 that he didn't follow up on. And when I showed up on the flag raising in 2019, he also took some actions that day. And whether, I don't know what role he played, but he certainly received an email. He certainly stood feet away from me. He certainly saw Matt Luloff and Sean Menard approach me, each independently. offering support. He certainly saw Laura Dudas and um, a bunch of other representatives and people in the community, um, feet away. And Jim's Jim's his own person. Um, I don't really want to have to hear from him or about him or to have to live under the oppression of how he coordinated his career or the contacts that he made. And I'm certainly not interested in having that fall onto the current mayor or the current chief of police or the current police board or the current um, matters at hand for my brothers and sisters and siblings in my union or in my community or in my home or in my life. So if you or someone you know is Jim Watson adjacent, I would say that this is not the place. Because I still believe, I still know that the people who are accountable for things have not been accountable, and so it's not for me to be a part of that conversation. I don't go to T's All Welcoming Pub. I haven't for a very long time. You can ask the owner, you can ask the performers, you can ask the staff. I'm not part of that. I walk past it many times. I see people on the street or in the courtyard, and I say hi because it's not their problems. And if they are part of it, that it hasn't been communicated to me. So, Les Cameron and Stanton Lowe, I believe, are the owners of that establishment still. So if there's any worries about the pub, then go see them. I never ever was an employee there. I never ever worked for them. I did, however, support the pub when it opened in 2017 by just hanging out. I think I kind of met them probably in the summer around that time, and then got to do karaoke and got to do a bunch of things. But due to some local politicians and hustlers and bustlers and performers within that space, I'm still trying to create a scenario in which they're a little bit more aware of how their actions are seen outside of their own bubbles. So if John wants to keep the bar, or John and Angela think that they own it, or they run it, or that they influence it, or that they need to be there, whoever, go fill your boots. I've never ever, I don't care to try to speculate who's in charge of what. I just always operate from a standpoint of hoping that the care and support that I offered before will one day result in a solution and a safety plan that allows for me to be back and participating. So in 2026, I'm going to end with this. I know I keep saying I'm going to end, but I will say, no matter who you are, no matter what you're doing, if we share a home, if we share a community, if we share a neighborhood, if we share a membership. I am an individual. I deserve peace, love, privacy, inclusion, and I deserve to be assessed on what I do, not the story that's told about me. And, you know, it's no secret that North America, Canada, US, Mexico, that we're dealing with a pandemic of substance abuse and mental health, that we're dealing with people who need coping skills and who have long-term health effects from alcoholism or drug use. There's no doubt that there's a rise in hate towards vulnerable communities. And so, regardless of what piece of the puzzle, whether you watch me continue to deal with the fallout because of other people's coercive control or other people's politics or other people's sense of entitlement, that's on you. I am who I am what I am where I am, and that's on me. So, that's today's check-in. I don't even know what'll come of this. Like, literally, it's been almost 2 hours. And I'm feeling amazing. I feel really great. If you see me on the TikTok, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull a card for inspiration. So right now I'm working with these Gaia Oracle cards. This is a wellness tool that I have. If you see over my shoulder, I'm an advanced level facilitator for the Wellness Recovery Action Plan. That shouldn't be something that my insurance company tries to suggest I'm a fraud for. It shouldn't be anything that my employer or my union thinks that I have, or that they have any say over that, because I really landed on the Wellness Recovery Action Plan and the values and ethics and the principles and the guidelines and the time spent for me to become an advanced level facilitator. I did it my way, and I continue to be undermined, and it is what it is, but I don't have to accept it. So what I accept is that I have hope, and hope is a practice I can cultivate. I understand what self-responsibility, what personal responsibility, and what taking responsibility looks like. I educate myself about myself, even though I only have a grade 8 education, and that's really a popular, punching down point from people like Jim Watson and Bill McPhee and Clint Crabtree and John Manconi and others. I know that I can educate myself about myself. I know that I can be educated. I know that I can self-advocate, and I have the right to. And by self-advocating, that I'm really just living in the present. And self-advocacy feels a lot better than feeling like there's nothing for me. And support. So knowing who my supporters are, knowing who they are not, having a safety action plan, having early warning signs and action plans, having signs when things are breaking down in action plans, having crisis plans and post-crisis plans, and having a community of practice and a history of practice that will be recognized in the court, that definitely anything that's ever been alleged against me, it certainly satisfies that. And so I hope that for everybody as well. So I'm going to pull this card in hopes that every single person who needs to be seen, heard, or felt will get that today, just for today. So, here's the cards. I'm going to shuffle them so you can see them. Oh, there, I'll take this one. It jumped up. So what does this say? Ooh, my. The goddess of creation, transformation, creativity, and wholeness. Okay. That's card 7. So, you know, it's easy to see things like tarot or oracle cards and think, oh, is this like voodoo or, you know, Mecca Lecca High, Mecca Hiney Home, and blah, blah, blah. It's not. So this is the Gaia Oracle by Tony Carmine Salerno. Some of the cards are like Tree of Life, Moonlight Goddess, Harmony, the Dream, Gaia, the Search, Goddess of Creation, which we're about to read, Attachment, a Hidden Gift, Jewel within a Teardrop, etc. And Gaia basically is from the Greek, the goddess of the earth. So, and this is from the guidebook, okay? So, the word oracle, which signifies prophecy, stems from ancient Greece and Rome. An oracle was traditionally a shrine where, through the medium of priest or priestess, the gods and goddesses were consulted and prophetic advice was sought. The oracle is any person or thing believed to indicate future action. The ancient Greeks and Romans held strong spiritual beliefs and often sought advice from the oracle before undertaking any significant course of action. Throughout the past centuries, the oracle has taken on many forms and has reappeared in the form of card sets such as this one. I often receive feedback from people who have used my oracle cards telling me how accurate a message was for them, inferring that I have some kind of magical power that gives them the answers to their questions. However, flattering as this may be, it is simply not the case. It is not the creator of an oracle card set that has the power of prophecy, but the individual user. Each time you pick a card, you are intuitively guided by your soul to pick the card that has the most relevance for you at the time. Soul is the guiding force behind my work. Therefore, the guidance that you receive through this set transcends time and space. This is because soul is energy, and energetically we are all interconnected throughout time and space. Past, present, and future are not separate. Life is a continuum, It does not stop and start. What we perceive as death does not stop the wheels of life from turning. In actuality, death is merely a transformation. To the soul, time, space, and separation do not exist. All is connected, all is one. Far back in time, light from the underlying fabric of creation bursts forth, creating the superluminous event through which our universe was born. This is when time began, setting forth on an endless journey through ever expanding space. The early universe was simply a set of particles floating through space and time. But life's invisible wheels were already in motion, and over time, the sea of particles became a sea of stars from which Gaia, our Earth, was born. A living, breathing entity. Our goddess, our mother, and our reflection, Gaia, our beautiful planet, is not separate from us, and we are not separate from her. Just as we are not separate from the sun, stars, and planets that surround us. Keep this in mind when you are working with this deck. The message or guidance can be connected to anyone, regardless of whether they are close to you or far from you, and regardless of whether they are alive or have passed. We travel through the endless corridors of our mind until one day we find a pathway that leads us to our heart. The purpose of Gaia Oracle is to point you in love's direction. She offers guidance, healing, and peace. May she be your sanctuary, may she inspire you, and may you feel her love. Yet remember that her love and guidance is not confined to the images and words in this set. Gaia's soulful presence can be felt in many ways, and her wisdom comes in many forms. For example, through the first words you read when you open a book at random, or a message on a billboard or street sign, her guidance can even take the form of a perceived setback, which steers your life in a whole new direction. It can be a chance encounter, an act of kindness from a stranger, or words of a song. Her guidance is all around us, and she presents us with endless possibilities that we can access intuitively by keeping an open heart and mind. Above all, remember that Gaia always guides us to our heart, our own heart, for it is through the heart that the ultimate prophecy is revealed, and essentially that prophecy is love. I sincerely hope you find something in Gaia Oracle that inspires you and helps you to create the life of your dreams with love and light. And then there's different ways you can use the cards, and etc., etc. So I like a good even time frame, so that's why I took the extra time to read that. It's been an hour and 54 minutes. The goddess of creation, so transformation, creativity, and wholeness. And so I'm going to dedicate this to Jim Watson, because wherever he is, whatever he's doing, hopefully he'll be able to just do it, and that it won't involve me anymore. I think I've paid my dues. I've put in my time. I've certainly had to tolerate a whole lot of bullshit at the hands of the choices that Jim Watson felt were important. This also goes to Shawn Moore, because obviously Shawn Moore is going through something in his own life that makes him, even after all these years, have to bring attention to me and have to represent what I felt was our shared oath in such a dehumanizing way. So this is for him and anybody who has his sense of entitlement. It definitely goes out to brothers, sisters, cousins, and siblings who are the front line of anything, but who are also on the receiving end of this type of attention that just doesn't do much for anybody. And this goes out to anybody who needs it. It just is what it is. So the goddess of creation, transformation, creativity, and wholeness. It's time for you to chill out and let go of rigid and fixed ideas. Relax and take time out to just be. You really have been trying too hard lately and are taking things far too seriously. This has blocked your creativity and caused your energy levels to be low. You probably tell yourself that you don't have time to relax, but you must make the time. Make this a priority, and you will find that an interesting transformation takes place. Your creativity will increase, and you will feel revitalized by a newfound sense of purpose and inspiration. Your mind may be telling you that relaxation is a futile waste of time, yet the opposite is true. Relaxation will slow down your thoughts and open your heart. It is fuel for the soul that will have a positive flow on effect for your entire being. Your well-being is of paramount importance, so do not take it for granted. Without it, nothing else really matters. The affirmation. I take time every day to relax. I make time each day to nurture my spirit. I connect spiritually to a space of love inside my heart. I find peace within. I am light. I am love. So that's a great way to wrap up this practice. There's someone in my life represented by this tattoo, actually. I refer to him as my cousin Vinny. And I met him 10 years ago, roughly. 2014, actually, so 12 years ago. But my cousin Vinny, one of the things that he taught me is how much we can say without saying anything. How nonverbal folks are still quite verbal. And how much a gift that having a billion words is in terms of communicating what we need or want. So even when people don't pick it down, there's a real privilege to having any words at all. So I honor and recognize the privilege of being able to be this open and this out for this long. So peace from here to fruition.